When trust feels fragile and the distance between you and the woman you love starts to hum like a low, persistent note, you do not need tricks or traps. You need clarity, dignity, and a way to move forward that preserves your heart while seeking the truth. I am Dr. Alina Rose, and what I offer here is not manipulation, but a steady, psychological framework that you can use to protect yourself, invite honesty, and act from a place of strength. These 5 approaches will help you move from confusion to clarity without becoming someone you do not respect, and they will keep the moral ground beneath your feet steady, even if the relationship is breaking. First, learn to notice patterns, not moments. A single late night, one strange message, or one awkward silence does not prove betrayal, but patterns do. Pay attention to rhythm. When ordinary conversation turns occasional and then scarce, when answers become clipped or rehearsed, when the warmth that used to arrive naturally turns into scheduled politeness. Keep a calm mental ledger. Note what changed, when it changed, and how often. Did her responsiveness shift to specific hours of the day? Are explanations becoming shorter or more elaborate depending on the question? Does intimacy fade in subtle increments rather than vanish all at once? Observing patterns prevents you from reacting to noise and gives you a map of truth over time. Write down the shifts you see in neutral terms, times, dates, behaviors, not as accusations, but as evidence for a future honest conversation. Patterns give you perspective. They transform suspicion into structure, and structure allows you to approach the situation with a clear head rather than a racing heart. Second, build a safe conversation, not a confrontation. When people sense danger, they defend. When they feel safe, they admit. Anger extracts walls. Calm invites doors to open. Start from an observation, not a judgment. Use language that names the behavior and the emotion it creates in you. I've noticed we talk less lately, and that makes me feel distant. Notice the difference between that and, you never talk to me anymore. One sounds like an invitation to explain, the other sounds like an attack. Offer her a chance to speak without threat. Ask open-ended questions that cannot be answered with a single word, and listen with the intention of understanding rather than proving a point. Keep your tone steady, your posture relaxed, and your questions simple. Can you help me understand what's been different for you lately? Is there something you're carrying that I don't know about? If she becomes defensive, do not escalate. Repeat the observation calmly and return to silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is a container that allows truth to emerge. When you remove the emotional pressure, you reduce the incentive to invent stories. You are creating the psychological condition where honesty feels safer than concealment. Third, protect yourself practically and legally, but do it without violating trust. Protecting yourself is not the same as spying. Do simple, lawful things to preserve your options and your dignity. Secure financial documents, make sure important accounts are accessible to you if needed, and document significant changes in shared finances. If you suspect that your actions could have legal or financial consequences, consult a lawyer to ensure you follow a lawful path and avoid taking any actions that could harm you later. Do not advise or execute covert surveillance, password cracking, or illegal monitoring. Those actions undermine your moral position and can exacerbate the situation. Practical protection is about preserving your life and liberty while you seek the truth, not about proving guilt through methods that compromise you. Do what you must to keep yourself safe and stable, quietly and lawfully, so that whatever the truth, you can respond from strength, not desperation. Fourth, reset boundaries and invite accountability. When behavior makes you uneasy, establish clear, calm boundaries that demonstrate your value to yourself. Boundaries are not ultimatums, they are requests for mutual respect. Name what you need to feel safe and offer a concrete path to rebuild trust. Shared calendars for certain activities, agreed transparency around particular habits that cause worry, or a commitment to couples counseling for a set number of sessions. Be specific and reasonable and propose a clear timeline for reviewing progress. For example, you might say, I need us to agree on some basic transparency for the next month so we can rebuild trust. Let's check in 2 weeks and see how we're doing. Accountability is not meant to trap. It is meant to restore structure. If she refuses reasonable boundaries or continues evasive behavior, that refusal tells you something important about the relationship's willingness to repair. Boundaries protect you emotionally and create an honest test. Will she meet you halfway, or will the evasiveness continue? Either answer is information you can use to choose the next right step for your life. Fifth, get outside help and focus on your healing. You are not built to carry the entire weight of suspicion and heartbreak alone. A trained therapist or couples counselor can offer a neutral space where both of you can speak and be heard, without the emotional charge of the relationship, making the truth impossible to face. If the relationship is salvageable, counseling can create the structure that allows for honest repair. If it is not salvageable, a counselor can guide the separation process so it happens with as much dignity and care as possible. Meanwhile, protect your mental and physical health. Establish a daily routine, maintain a regular sleep and exercise schedule, and lean on trusted friends. Not to gossip about her choices, but to ground yourself in reality and receive emotional support. Do not use support as fuel for vindictive plans. Use it as ballast to keep your heart steady. Throughout this work, maintain a plain and humane tone. When you speak, use phrases that invite truth rather than trigger defense. Try lines such as, "I want to understand what changed between us," or, "I'd rather know the truth and work from there than hold on to half-truths," or, "If something is happening, tell me plainly so we can decide what to do with honesty." These words are direct without being cruel. They give her the chance to step into honesty without theatrics, and they preserve your integrity if she chooses not to. Resist the temptation to weaponize uncertainty. When you become a calmer, clearer version of yourself, truth often surfaces, because guilt cannot live comfortably in the presence of steady dignity. Finally, remember what true strength looks like. Strength is not the loudest voice in the room, it is the calmest. It is the man who can say, "I notice distance. I value myself enough not to accept being treated as less than I deserve. I am asking for truth, and I am prepared to walk away if honesty is not possible." You do not have to threaten. You only have to stand in the truth of your standards. You do not need to prove her guilt to protect your heart. You only need to maintain boundaries that honor your worth. If she chooses honesty, then there is a path forward. If she chooses secrecy, then you have preserved your dignity and the ability to rebuild your life elsewhere. This journey will not be easy. It asks you to resist anger, to hold your center, and to act with a combination of practical wisdom and moral courage. However, it is the only way to know you did the right thing on your own. You will not control her choices, but you can control how you meet them, with observation rather than obsession, with calm invitation rather than accusation, with lawful protection rather than covert harm, with boundaries that invite repair rather than resentments that explode, and with the humility to seek help when the truth is too heavy to carry alone. That is the work of a man who refuses to become smaller because of another person's choices. That is how you protect your peace, your future, and your heart. And how you give the relationship, if it is worth saving, the best chance to find its way back to honesty.